First of all, I want to say that Simone's bio is very interesting. It's very inspiring. I really like how she is bridging the gap in between, the gender gap in the industry. And also, she does not only bridge the gap, but she also inspires and lets young people know that they can also do it. So we'll start reading a bio from now. Let us get going. So Simone Naicker is a metallurgical engineer at Exxarro Resources with a degree in chemical engineering from the University of Pretoria. Simone works on optimizing processes for maximum performance and seeks to use technology to aid decision making and improve her ability to detect deviations. She is an engineer on the largest coal beneficiation site in the world. Simone has been called an international mining and minerals influencer and was the official young engineering advocate at the Investing in African Mining Indaba 2022. She has a meaningful presence on LinkedIn with over 13,000 followers in the mining space internationally. Simone shares a love for engineering and mining with us all. As a young woman in mining, she's an advocate for equality and opportunity. All right. She's a strong voice in our industry and goes by the hashtag Simone Says. I don't know if you know that game Simone Says, but I remember that we used to play it in junior school. So I would like to know if she also knew about that game. Thank you.
Thank you, Tal. That was incredibly handled. Tal has this interesting way of presenting our guests. So thank you very much. So I guess our guest would let us know if she played Simone Says or not. Hi, Simone.
There we go. Hi, Tobi. Can you both see and hear me? I hope so.
Yes, we can see you clearly and we can hear you very clearly.
Great.
Thank you for joining us today. All right, so I think we can start with the question that Tal asked. Did you know about a game called Simone Says?
There's a game called Simon Says, and I remember that game.
Okay.
But I think I might be part of the generation of a new game called Simone Says in that game.
Okay, I like that. And we'll be happy to play it and introduce it to our kids at some point,
Wonderful.
All right. Not to scare you, our last guest was an amazing human who could speak about 5 to, I think, 8 languages. And one of the things that we did when he joined us was to let him say hi to us in about 8 languages. So what language do you speak? It's fine if it's just once, and say hi to us in that language.
Okay, well, unfortunately for me, I'm down quite a few generations as an Indian person in South Africa. And so I can't actually speak an Indian language fluently, which is interesting culturally. So I myself am very African and South African, so I can greet you in English, of course, and say hello. I'm learning some Benda, so I can say I'm trying to think bonjour. I can do a little bit of French. But yeah, I think South Africa is also an incredibly diverse place. So, with all our 11 official languages, you know a little bit of each one and you can kind of just get by. So I hope I've at least just got by.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you very much. It was really good to hear you say hi to us in about 5 languages. It was about 5, so you've done a good job. So tell us, what is fascinating about you? What is amazing about you that is outside of your bio, which is in itself amazing for us?
That's a very difficult question to ask someone. But I think I'll take it as what sets me apart, and I think in that respect, it's being authentic. I try my best, whether it's good or bad, to be myself in all situations that I find myself in. And I think that sometimes it's difficult because, you have an idea of what you think you should be. And I do my best to try to be authentic.
True, true. You know, my previous engagement with you has literally shown me that you are very authentic, which is strange because we get to learn that influencers are people who are very not, not human. They just be who they want to be on screen, and in person with you it's different. So I can attest to that. That is very true. So now back to your engineering career. You work in the coal industry. We know that coal is getting a very bad rep in these days. So tell us, why coal? Why coal?
So I grew up in a town that was very industrious, and I could see my dad works in energy, and I grew up around people who worked in plants and on mines, and I think that influence really became part of it. And while I was in high school, I studied hard, and my mum actually applied for a bursary for me with Exxarro. And when I got the bursary, and if you're told that your studies are going to be paid for, I think it's a no-brainer really. And it was an industry that I was fairly familiar with, and I received a great opportunity, and I took it.
Absolutely amazing, beautiful, beautiful. So, and that was how you began your journey into coal.
Very
Absolutely.
much.
Cool, cool. So, when I started sharing or sharing with my friends about our next speaker and for these careers in mining conversation, and I told them that you studied chemical engineering, but you're not metallurgical. People keep asking, what is the difference between chemical and metallurgical? And was it a transition? What did they do differently? So, would you mind letting us know the difference between both of them?
Yeah, so they're both process engineering disciplines. And I think all engineering really stems from, the great mechanical engineering and fixing engines and doing cars. And, everything became a subsection and derivative of that initial engineering, with the engine itself, right? So where chemical engineering went into was mostly piping systems, reactivity, looking into equipment like, I'm thinking more your refinery type equipment where you're working with your oils and your gas and that kind of industry, where I find that metallurgy is more of a physical properties degree and basis. So you're looking at also processing, but processing for physical characteristics more than, I think, reactivity. So chemical engineering has more to do with reactivity and output in that sense, where your metallurgy looks at the strength of that material, the size, its applicability. And I think you can transition, and you can transition well because you have a process engineering mindset and you understand processes. And when you understand how something works and you learn how to learn, I think it's very easy to transition between things.
Oh, amazing. So I'm one taking from this that beyond just chemical to metallurgical. So once you have an engineering center, just like you said, you can transition between engineering disciplines.
I wouldn't be so bold as to say that because there is specialization between the disciplines. But what I can say is that the process engineering, specifically chemical and metallurgy, they do share the common thread of process, which means I have a raw material, I want to do something to it, and I need an output. And it's the only thing that's different between the two degrees is how you get there, and you learn about different techniques and technologies. So the reason you can transition is because you have the fundamental process understanding. I definitely wouldn't jump into any kind of engineering now confidently.
Okay, okay, now that's clearer for us. Okay, so tell us, what is beneficiation? I think it's something very related to metallurgical, right? So tell us, what
Yeah.
is beneficiation? You said you work in the largest beneficiation complex in the world. And tell us about that and tell us about beneficiation.
Yeah, so beneficiation is a word that metallurgists use to scare away other people and make it sound like we're doing something absolutely fantastical and incredible. So it's a word we do like to throw in there every now and again for a little bit of street cred. Um, but what it actually means is taking a raw material like an ore, processing it again, coming back to process. So processing it and obtaining a usable product. So the ring you'd wear on your finger or the jewelry that you wear, it doesn't just materialize out of nothing. So it actually probably really looks quite dirty and ugly, and it's in the ground and it's all gray until it's polished and beneficiated. So beneficiation in a coal context would mean that, we have the earth as it is, and over time, we've had organic material that's died and formed layers in the earth, and with heat and pressure, over time it's actually formed coal. And what we do is then blast and dig up the earth, but we can't just use that earth as it is. So beneficiation is the process of taking that and understanding what that particular ore needs in order to become refined.
So within this beneficiation process, what is the role in that process?
Yeah, so as a metallurgical engineer, my day-to-day is to understand the reserve and understand what we call run of mine, or the material coming into the mine, or into the plant rather. Understand the composition of that material. See how much of the material that's coming in is actually good stuff, right? And through the plant processing, we want to extract as much of that as we can. And so essentially my role is to understand the reserve and to optimize equipment to maximize output of that good stuff in the feed. So we talk about something called a yield. So essentially a yield is how much product you get divided by the amount of feed that you put in. So the higher that percentage, the better you are at your job, really.
It's because that sounds really fascinating to me, and I'm coming to realize that this ore that you extract in your case, which is coal, right? Is different for every output, or is it similar for every output from the mine, the run of mine? So literally, you're trying to ensure that the plant matches what comes out from the mine. Is that not complex? Does that sound easy?
I wouldn't say I'd like to keep my job, so I wouldn't say that it's easy. But what I would say is that with practice and with time, you can develop skills in any field. So I think the degree gives you a good foundation and basis, and then you go and you apply it to an industry. So with the qualification of chemical engineering specifically, or metallurgical engineering, you can really go into a lot of things. When I was studying, some of our practicals were in fact to make alcohol. I know there was like a team, the guys would get together and they go brew beer and get really excited about it. And that's chemical engineering. Anything that requires a process, you turn something into something better. That's what process engineers do.
So what skills qualifies you for this role? I know that you've mentioned that you need to have your degree in that specific process engineering. So what other skills do you think stands you out when you get this kind of role, or if you're pursuing?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So naturally, your analytical skills are important. So the ability to look at a problem and not jump to a conclusion, but rather investigate, use knowledge, do research, understand the problem quite fully. In fact, I'm learning and getting better at scoping through, assistance from colleagues, and it's just a thing where you need to learn how to understand the problem. And I think once you understand the problem well, then you can look to finding appropriate solutions. So I think one of the great skills that you need is being able to scope out a problem correctly. I also think that interpersonal skills are vital, because while in the mining sector, you're working with machinery and equipment. I mean, some of those trucks are massive. I would stand next to it and I'm not even the height of half of the wheel. So, you're working with massive equipment. And I think in that environment, you might think that it's about the machines and the process and all of this stuff, but we must always remember that we work with people, and working with people, you'll need to have the skills to manage, to discuss, and to motivate. So especially when you're working in teams, I think the ability to have a conversation will assist you in resolving those problems as well.
Great. When you talked about analytical skills, problem solving skills, and people skills, what popped in my mind was, what role has people played along your journey? because you spoke about how people assisted you in this process, right? So what as people played in your journey?
I think a massive role. So I know in our first and second year of our engineering program at Exxarro, there's a competition called the PRT Symposium, and essentially what you're given is a group project, and you're essentially left to your own devices with this topic. And it was just amazing for me to see the different personalities that existed in that team dynamic, and to be able to acknowledge that there are people out there that are so different to me, but have incredible value to offer. So I think it's learning that you don't have to be everything. You can be in a team where you have complementary skills so that you can achieve an objective. And when we entered that competition, we actually won, and it was such a great feeling because we won not because of us as individuals, but because of how well we combined together. So I think that's an example of leveraging off one another's strengths.
Amazing. Just a question from our guests in the past talked about mentorship and talked about its relevance in career progression and career decision making. So do you think that has played any role for you, in your career journey so far?
Definitely. So on this program that I'm in, and also in many other capacities, I tend to seek advice from people that are more experienced. And in doing so, you can kind of map out, what they've done wrong and what they've done right. Sometimes we don't actually need to learn from our own mistakes. We can learn from the mistakes of others. So I think that's the importance and the value that mentorship brings.
Amazing. So I'm sure amongst all of these experiences, there's been some really amazing experiences, and there's been some that has not been the most amazing experiences. So share with us one amazing one and one that has not been so fascinating in your experience so far.
Okay, so I would say one of the really amazing experiences that I had was the culture shock and the culture change. So when I moved to Limpopo for the first time, I actually had never set foot in the province, and here I was ready to work. I have my degree. I'm excited, and I think it was really quite a surreal experience for me if I think back to it now. And I think integrating with culture and people and understanding the mining environment and being on a big plant for the first time, I think that was one of the really great experiences, and being able to lead a team, in that environment. It was just fascinating. So I had the opportunity to be the plant foreman on the largest plant at the site that I'm working at. And this was about 6 months after landing on site. And did I feel ready? No. But I took the opportunity, and I made sure that I consulted and I tried. So I think that was maybe one of the good ones. I think maybe a more difficult experience that I had was when I had to, in my second year, act as a senior metallurgist commissioning a plant. And I think that's quite a lot to ask of somebody. But I again was given the opportunity, and I took on the role. And I think one of the tough things there was that, a few trains were out of specification, and you look at it and you see the number and you wish, it could be a different number. But after learning and making mistakes, and some of the product isn't in the specification that you want, you go back and you learn, refine the process, and eventually you do get trains that are on spec with coal on them. But I think it's acknowledging that, sometimes you just need to learn the hard way, and I think that was one of those times.
One of our guests just asked, he said, how did you cope? But I think you answered the question. So yeah, I think
I suppose I could add on to that while I'll say don't be hard on yourself, I know I'm extremely hard on myself. So have I would say people around you that care about you. And for me, that's the thing that really gets me through, because sometimes I'll be incredibly hard on myself and I'll give a perspective that's actually really awful, and someone that loves me will say, hey, don't think like that, think like this, and help in transition. Because sometimes we, we can't be everything, and we can't always be together and strong and, this amazing engineer that can just do everything. Sometimes you do need a bit of help. And I think the quality of the people that you keep close is very important.
Great. So, there's this fascinating thing when I read your bio, which had to do with your influencer role. Just before I ask you that question, I just want to let everybody know that if you have questions, you can use the chat section and submit your questions. Just after this interview section, we would ask Simone all the questions, and as much as possible, she'll give our response to it. And if we can answer, we would send you an email containing the feedback that you've requested. So when I read about your influencer role and how you have 13,000 followers on LinkedIn,
yeah,
I was like, wow. So literally, you can be an influencer in any industry, in any space. Enough of reality shows, but in the industry you have one. So how did it come about, and was it a planned event, or you just happened to fall into it? Let us know.
Yeah, I think it's very much a personality thing that's happened. So I remember going home one of the holidays, and I found an old a school report, and it was actually one of my preschool reports.
Yeah.
And the teacher wrote at the bottom of the report, and it was so funny years later finding it and seeing it, and it said Simone is very confident in adult company. And this was a report when I was about 6, 7 years old. And I think that I think it's an indication of the confidence and the things. But I will share that for a long time I did feel like I had a lot to say, but I was afraid to kind of say it because what will people think, right? So I did initially, on LinkedIn, I'd make a post and I'd wait. And I'd have anxiety. And I'm like, no one liked my post. Maybe my post isn't a good idea. Maybe this isn't a good idea. Being an influencer is for somebody else. Let me delete this. Okay, never mind. So I'm no exception to, those feelings and thoughts. So what's interesting about it was, that was like 2, 3 years ago when I was like, let me try this. Okay, no. Let me try this. Okay, no. And one day I just left. I didn't delete the post. And here we are. And it became, one after another. And I actually got to a point where I realized that it's not about whether someone likes it, and it's not about the share or the comments. And actually, I just started sharing because there was so much happening in here that I wanted to say, and I wanted to get out there and just manifest tangibly that actually I feel like LinkedIn is a little bit of therapy for me because it's articulating my thoughts in a space that I can experience them. So I think the influencer thing is actually just people enjoying me reflect and think about engineering, mining in my life. So yeah.
Amazing. So you're saying that way beyond something you can learn, it has to be a personality thing for you to say you're a better influencer. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying it has to be personality. I'm saying it helps. What I will say is that if you do want to build a following, anyone can build a following. You can be incredibly introverted, hate people, and build a following just because you share that and you're authentic about that, because there are other people who are introverted and hate people. So you'll find your community somewhere.
Okay, so tell us, what does it entail? I know you've mentioned that it's just you having to share what goes on in your head, but we know that beyond, just like you are a president, behind everything we see, there's a process. So tell us, what does it entail to be an influencer, and what does it mean to have stayed consistent so this far? It's been about 3, 4 years now.
Yeah, so it has been about 4 years actually that I've been sharing. So to be honest, behind the scenes, I try my best not to, come up with an official posting schedule and go research and come up with content and create a calendar and put it out. But that is a method that a lot of people use. They say, this is what I want to talk about. And if I was to give advice to someone, I would say, you can go about it that way. Have a content calendar, figure out, the kind of things you'd like to share. For me personally, I haven't gone that route because I tend to share quite frequently, and then maybe for a week I get COVID or I'm sick, and I may share a little less, and I think I'm okay with that. So for me, I'm not intending on being a mega influencer, and the number next to my name on LinkedIn means very little to me. And it's, although I value it and I feel it's given me a lot of opportunity, like speaking at the mining Indaba and doing these things, I don't base my self-worth on that number.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So I'm sure it has its pluses. You being just like you said, one of the things was for you to get invited to mining Indaba. To the best of my knowledge, I learned mining Indaba is possibly one of the largest mining investment conference in the world. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think especially in Africa, definitely. So it is the highlight of the investing and mining and minerals industry. So I met quite a few people who actually work in investment there as well, and I saw you there.
Yeah. So apart from the mining Indaba, are there other incentives that you think you've received from being an influencer? Because I think some people might be considering that option.
Yeah, so I have been posted a box and I had to, do a review, and I thought that was quite fun. So that was for Amber Safety. So they're a company that works in communications, and that's quite cool. I've also been invited to speak, for example, at an event like this, which I really appreciate because it just aligns with my values. I want to talk about mining, and I want to talk about being authentic in mining and not necessarily feeling like we all have to be these serious mining people with our safety boots and our hard hats and just adding so much value that it's insane. I mean, we're human at the end of the day. But I would say there are a lot of incentives in terms of advertising and that kind of thing that a lot of influencers, especially on YouTube and stuff, do. But I think for me personally, I try to keep it about the organic content and about sharing. So if something does come along, I would be open to it. I will be honest in saying that I'm not actively seeking to monetize. So that isn't the space that I'm in currently. I think I'm more in the authentic sharing space. And I think with time, if there are opportunities in a video to put in an ad or to share, I think I'd consider it, but only if it aligned with my values.
Okay, great. So just a question I can just throw in. Do you see at any point, or do you see yourself at any point trying to mentor people who want to do the same thing that you do?
Yeah, so I currently actually mentor, and I share and meet with colleagues of mine. So I have spaces where I do share and give advice, not necessarily formalized, but I think yeah, with time, I think that could very well be something I look into.
I like that. I like that. So, when you posted about this event on your LinkedIn, like you always do, you said that you would like to speak about mining in Indaba. So tell us, what is the most fascinating thing about the experience for you, and feel free to just share about what it was, because I'm sure some people might be willing to be a part of it in subsequent years.
Yeah, so the Investing in African Mining Indaba is essentially an event where heads of state, presidency, really it's the place where a lot of your decision makers of companies attend. So it tends to be, the executive committee, the CEOs. And I think being in that space, you start to have conversations where you can actually leave, wanting to change something. So it's actually quite a wonderful space to be in. One of the presidents that attended, I remember him saying that the time for us to, talk about mining and talk about the things that we want to change is gone, and that he wants to see action. And I think it's a place where, people go to get inspired to go and do something. So it's a conference, there's speakers and stalls where companies come in and say, this is who they are. And really, it's just a massive networking event where there's speakers that share their personal and professional experiences. And yeah, it's quite a cool event.
Great. So do you have, I'm sure you've attended, that is literally not your first, networking event. Neither is it that is going to be your last one.
Yeah.
Are there any advantages of being in such events personally, for your career? Do you have?
Yeah, so what I can say is that what was great about the event is that I spoke at the event. So I was a speaker and I spoke about energy and the energy transition, the just transition as we're referring to it. And I think it was really great to add to a professional portfolio that I was in, part of a conference like this and speaking about engineering and how we can use engineering to improve our social environmental governance. And yeah, I think, it makes you reputable to be able to, speak at such events, firstly. And secondly, the opportunity to just meet like-minded people. It's so funny that, when you're there and you're standing in a queue for a cup of coffee, that, you could meet your next employer or you could meet your next friend, or, it's a very open environment. And I think senior leadership isn't always very accessible. And a conference like this really makes senior leadership accessible.
So in case you're listening and you're wondering how to, possibly, build a career path or get a job, you can follow Simone's advice, try as much as possible to get into the conference or any conference near you and get to speak to the leadership. I'm sure you'll get one or two responses that are favorable.
Also, part of the sorry, Tobi. Part of the Mining Indaba, one of the days they actually have a section for the youth, and I do believe that is open. So they try to really facilitate, young people coming in and experiencing as well. So I do encourage you to, find conferences nearby, go talk to people.
Great. Just to chip it in here, when I was making my career decisions, one of my mentors did tell me that if you really want to grow fast, you need to attend and go to networking events. And at that point, I thought it was not necessary, but obviously the gains of it is amazing. So please consider that option. So a number of your posts has had you tag women in mining. And it's an organization for women, but I know you can talk about it more than I can. So just after you've talked about it, I want to ask you, if you have a choice of choosing your career over again, would you choose a career as a woman in a male-dominated industry?
It's an interesting question. So I think I wouldn't do anything differently. I've enjoyed working in mining and I would choose it all over again. So when I was in high school, I was thinking about what do I study, where do I go, what do I do? I actually wanted to be a high school math teacher because I found that math was just so important and we needed to open up careers in STEM and in these fields. And I never let go of that passion and that dream actually, because in my personal capacity with my partner, we actually engage on a mathematics level. We've created an online platform and, we're really trying to make a difference and move the needle and make maths less scary. So, I think when you choose a career, it doesn't mean that you have to let go of things that you're passionate about. You can follow your career path and still go and impact those communities and find projects and ways that you can help people.
Okay, great. So you haven't spoken about the women in mining actually. So tell us about it.
Yeah. Okay. So with respect to women in mining specifically, I think, yeah, it can be tough being a woman in a male-dominated industry. But again, I'm gonna bring personality. I think if you're gonna cower in a corner and be afraid to speak up, then it will be a difficult environment for you. If you're willing to, show your value, really engage, and then you'll be appreciated for that value that you're showing. And I think the industry's changed a lot already. We talk about, women in mining and oppression and, the things that have gone on in the past. And I can say quite confidently that the environment is very facilitating, especially at the workplace that I'm at. Women are being given fantastic opportunities. And I think the women in mining narrative needs to extend past just being had around tables with women. I think it's a conversation that should be had across the board with women and with men, because the narrative of women in mining for me personally is not that women are better or smarter or anything, because then we're just creating the opposite problem, right? So it's about saying, how do we showcase the unique capabilities of women and incorporate that in a way that is meaningful, together with the unique capabilities of men. And we create diverse, complex teams that can drive initiatives from a holistic perspective. So that's my personal view on women in mining. It's integration more than just replacement and yeah, those kind of narratives.
Interesting views, interesting views. So one question I would like to ask as we round up this part of the event is, I'm sure there are people who have joined this, conversation with that mindset that Simone inspires me, or there's a part of Simone that inspires me. So what is that one thing that you will leave with them today that you think has assisted you to get to where you are today, and they can leverage on that to build their own selves, careers, and goals too?
It's a loaded question, but if I can put it simply, I would say have confidence in your abilities and understand your span of control. Know what you can change and what is in your control to change, and what you cannot change but need to accept and work around and facilitate. So understanding my span of control has been an incredible tool. And if you just Google span of control, you'll see that there's a lot of information out there about it. So it would be that, understand where you can influence and influence in those spaces, and manage the spaces where you cannot. And secondly, make sure that you have a good support system. Sometimes, when making friends and with choosing the people that we associate with, we assume that we should go and hang out with the most popular people in the room, the people that everyone's talking to, the people that, seem to be the most wonderful and influential. And that's really a very silly metric to use to create a circle, because I think looking for people who share your values is way more important, and create that support system, because it will definitely help you.
Amazing, amazing. And I think we've had an amazing conversation with you, and the points and the propositions that you've itemized were also very, very interesting. I think the takeaway for me is, being that confident in yourself and building the community around you is something I would hold on to and continue to hold on to. And that's what we are here to do. For those of you who are joining us for the very first time, AfriMine is proposing to build a community of young-minded and people who are passionate about the industry. So if you think you can be a part of this community, I can assure you that you have a swell time being a part of us. So we have some questions here for you, Simone. I'm sure you can also assess them. So we have one from Dina Naicker, probably your sister or your mom. She asked, women in mining, what were your challenges? How did you cope? And challenges, please. She's very, very interested in your challenges. What were the challenges that you experienced as a woman in mining?
Yeah, actually, it's my dad. I'm actually glad that he's on the call. So, hi, Dad. Yeah, so the challenges that I faced, I think, it's really just being able to be yourself in a space that is male dominated. So you feel that the energy may be very masculine, and you might feel like, oh, can I really ask this question? Can I really make the suggestion? And I think that what challenges you is having the confidence to speak up in those environments where you feel maybe my perspective won't be valued, and then choosing to speak up and still give those perspectives.
Okay, great. Speak up, very, very important. Cabello asked, what were your highlights about Exxarro bursary during your studies?
Well, the first part of the question, what were my
Highlights about the Exxarro bursary during your studies. I don't know.
Yes, okay. So the Exxarro bursary itself is holistic. They pay for all of your modules. They pay for your accommodation as well. And they give you a little bit of spending money, which I thought was very sweet of them. So you get a laptop in your second year, and I really felt that the combination of those benefits really, really assisted me to focus on school and to focus on studies. Because I mean, it's no secret that varsity is expensive, and financial strain is normal, and worrying about your fees takes the focus off your academics because you want to be able to be there, right? So I think mining bursary programs are very good, and I think the way they take care of you during your studies is it really allows you to focus on the work.
Great, great. So we have one from Sanisili Siwe in Jilo. She's also asking what your dad asked. Maybe you have one or two things to add to what you've said. Maybe you can. He said, I would like to know the challenges she has had as a woman in the male-dominated industry and what she intends to overcome them.
Yeah, I think something I can add is trying not to, take yourself too seriously helps as well, because sometimes you'll get a comment from a colleague that is ignorant, right? So it's because he does not know. It's not because he thinks that, thinks less of you. So sometimes you'll get a comment from someone who is ignorant and who does not have the knowledge to see your worth. And you can do one of two things. You can show them that you have value and that you have worth and change that perspective, or you could get upset, be angry, and come across with energy of shouting and wanting to change that, and why don't you respect me? And I can be very, very sure that the first method of saying, this is the value that I add, and to have the difficult conversation, to say, when you said this, it made me feel like this, and that isn't okay. Sometimes we shy away and we'll tell everyone else except for the person who said the thing,
True.
And how is that person ever supposed to change their perspectives or improve if we're not giving them the feedback? So I think learning how to give that feedback is so important.
Okay, thank you, thank you. I'm sure she must have gotten a good response to our question. Your dad also asked again, please tell us about your first day at the mine and how did you overcome those fears, if you had any?
Yeah, so I think my first day on site was more exciting than anything. I think I see fears more as like nerves. So, I had a little bit of nerves. I was nervous, excited, but I think stepping onto the mine and engaging with people and learning and seeing the plant and the processes, it was overwhelmingly good. I don't think that I was afraid as such on my first day. I was just very excited to get started. It was like, give me my first project. I am here. Yeah.
Great. I love that. I love that. Like, you can't be in the industry and not be excited about the industry. That's my little experience with the industry.
Yeah.
We have Karen here asking, it's such a great thing. Oh, it's a beautiful comment that professionals in the domain of mine and metallurgical engineering attend such event. I'm literally hungry for it. Sign up for our current mining events. You get updates every month and you get to join. Thank you for that comment. If I asked what can be done to reduce stereotypes against women and how to make the field more attractive for women?
I think education in terms of STEM and understanding, events like this, being able to speak to people and say, this is actually what an engineer in the mining space does. Sometimes people meet me and they ask, oh, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm an engineer. And I say it not with not expecting there to be a reaction, but there sometimes is to say, oh, you're an engineer, like, oh, like you are not visually what I thought an engineer is supposed to look like. And I've had that surprise and that response sometimes. And I think it's the exposure, right? If you have never seen, I don't know, something scary, but everyone's talking about it and they're saying, oh, yeah, there's a scary thing. Of course you're going to be afraid. Of course you're not going to know about it. So I think exposure is critical. So getting into schools, talking to people, having events like this where, you know, people can join and say, oh, okay, I saw a different looking engineer today, and maybe I will change my stereotypical view of what an engineer looks like. They're not all bald with a button shirt and glasses, and you know, that's not always what it looks like.
Okay, great. It's actually very, very true. Very true. So thank you for that complimentary comment about engineers. We have one from Sincerely again. Sincerely, please forgive me if I'm pronouncing your name wrongly. You said you're a wonderful speaker. I want to ask if it was challenging to start speaking publicly, and if so, how did you build such confidence?
Okay, so great question. What I would recommend for you is to go take a look at Toastmasters. So they're an international organization that actually helps you just with public speaking. So if you really, really struggle, I recommend going on a professional course like that. Go and take a look at Toastmasters. So they make you very uncomfortable, but you still go through the process. You know, one of the exercises, so it was actually, I was fortunate enough that it was part of my my late high school training. It was one of those elective things that, you know, you could do if you wanted to. I signed up for it and I was like, let's do this. So one of the things they do is they actually give you a bowl, and in the bowl it's just like one letter word, and they make you pick one out, and in front of everybody you just have 5 minutes, one word, and you need to come up with a speech. You know, I think it's little things like that that have really added, and practice really. So when I was in high school, I had to give quite a few speeches in my grade 12 year. When I went to varsity, you know, we presented on a project. When it came into the workplace, I have to present at work. So I really think, you know, when you're in a team and when you're in a group and they're like, find somebody to present, I challenge you to next time say, let it be me.
Great. And the last one for the day is coming from Carol again. She said, how do you think women in mining can cope with their families and husbands if the workplace is kilometers away from home?
I can relate. So I one of the places where I worked, it was like an hour to drive to work, an hour to drive home, and honestly, it's exhausting. I mean, to come home, you still need to have that energy for, you know, your loved ones, and I think that's every job, you know, when you have to leave home, be there the whole day, focus, you know, come back. So what I strongly recommend is to have a winding down routine. If you are working far away, that means that you're in transportation of some form for a long time. And I think use that time as your time, you know, call a friend, meditate, listen to music that calms you down, try and actually get into a space where you can start again when you get home, as if that's a brand new day. And with respect to balancing that, hopefully, you know, you can have those conversations with your partner and, you know, say, you know, honey, can you pick up the kids today and I will do it another day. And it's about partnership and really trying to understand how you can support one another.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you for answering all the questions. I think literally each one of them had one highlight that you could take home. So on that note, we would round up this session of the event, and we are glad and excited that you are a part of it. Thank you, Simone. We are indeed grateful.
No, I'm excited and I'm grateful. Thank you for inviting me and for having a chat. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.